Welcome to HiTech Farmer. My name is Matthias, and today we're going to get started on hauling some of our corn to town. We normally don't start hauling our corn to town until mid-June, July, but as you can tell from this road behind me and the ground all around, we've still yet to receive any snowfall here in the middle of December. So we figured in order to lay off some of the workload for next summer, we'll start emptying some of the bins. Which means I'm going to start taking off these covers that we have on our motors and our controls and move these blocks. That way the trucks can pull in here under the unload. Now that all the covers are off on the leg, it's time to decide which bin we want to start pulling grain out of first. And because all the bins have different corn from different fields with different maturities, hybrids of corn, that means all the corn in each of these bins has a little bit different percentage of moisture content. And the elevator takes up to 15.5% corn without dock, which means without charging me more money. And I know the corn in this bin is like 15.5 up to 17% moisture. So I'm gonna start with the load out of here to see where it's at, and then if I have to, we'll start blending corn off from some of these other bins that I know is drier. The first truck is here. It's time to get him loaded. And there goes our first load of corn out of the bins. Since we have 3 or 4 trucks coming today to haul loads, I'll be able to look on my phone here in about a half hour once that truck gets his way across the scale and unloaded to see what kind of moisture he's pulling. That way I know which bin to pull out of for the next driver. That first load we hauled in tested for moisture at 16.7%, and that came out of our wet bin right here. So now I'm loading up that same driver again, but I'm gonna be loading him out of our 48-foot corn bin, which I believe the moisture is gonna be right around 14 and a half. That way we'll have a nice average moisture that'll get averaged across all the loads. Well, we got the last truck loaded for the day. He's pulling out here behind me, and now we have a seed truck that's going to be dropping off some of our seed that we'll be planting next growing season. That's a half mile down the road. So I'm going to walk to the forklift, pull that out so we can unload him. Normally when we get seed in, I got to shovel all the snow in front of these big overhead doors. But thankfully, today is a beautiful day for getting some seed. In total, we offloaded 9 of those big white bags, which we call mini bulk bags of soybeans. And now he's up here at our other shed where we're gonna start offloading the corn. That there behind me is all the corn we got in for today. In total, I think we got out 7 or 8 loads of corn, number 2 corn, down to the ethanol plant. This corn right here is going to be used for our next growing season. And if you take a notice of the different colors of bags and wondering what that means, it's different trait packages that each corn hybrid is marked with. So the orange is one trait, the white with blue is another trait, and the white with yellow is a different trait package. And since that's all the trucks we have coming to the yard today, we'll see you guys back in the morning where we start loading and blending some more corn. It is now day number 2 of loading out corn. We got 10 loads in yesterday, which means we have another 10 loads to go to fill in our contract to have in by the end of the month. The 10 loads yesterday, I took 4 out of our wet bin right here, this big tall pencil looking one, 4 out of my dad's big corn bin back there closest to the road, and then 2 loads out of my grandpa's big bin back there in the corner. Adding up all the tickets from yesterday, we're at an average moisture of 14.8%, which means I'm gonna start hauling in some more wetter corn to try to bring that average up. And I'm gonna start taking that out of our wet bin because I know that's got some of that wetter corn and we're starting to get down to where I'm gonna need to scoop. So the goal for today is to see if we can get that bin emptied and bring our average moisture no higher than 15.5. The new unload on this wet bin we're taking out of, it's leaking a little bit of grain. So I figured while I'm waiting, I might as well clean it up. Well, sure enough, it froze overnight. Because this wet bin's so tall, it's hard for me to gauge how much corn is left in the bin yet. So I'm gonna climb up to the top, look down through the manhole. That way I know when we gotta start taking out of the side unloads. That way we can get the automatic sweep auger going. Here's the view from the top of the bin. You can see we're loading the truck now. Now let's look inside the bin to see how soon before we gotta start opening on the side unloads. It's hard to tell on these narrow corrugated bin sheets because normally on the wide corrugated ones I can just count down and then look at it outside, but on this one it's hard to tell. But I can see down there we're 2 sheets below my bin indicator. Those 2 sheets below the bin indicator, that's the indicator right there. So I figure I might as well start taking it out of the side. Now that we're taking out of the side sump here, this is usually where things can go wrong because the bin and the unload can overrun the capacity of our legs. So we gotta keep coming back up here to check our amp gauge on the leg. Make sure we're pulling no more than 40 amps. That way we don't overload it. I got her dialed in here at 40 amps, so we shouldn't have to adjust the crank now. So we got the door open and take the sweep auger on. I've loaded 6 trucks now for today. The grade level is right underneath the door. Well, looks like we got a ways to go here in the bin before we can kick the sweep auger on. Good problem to have that we have a lot of corn, but it's just gonna be a while since we got 3 little small doors to go before we're down to the floor. Got that truck loaded up, and I figured since we don't have another truck that's waiting here, we might as well shut the bin door since we got about 5 loads left in there. We're looking at about $25,000 that's sitting in there, and hate for some animal to go in there and make a mess. So we just shut the door in between loads. In the little bit of time I had between the last truck and this truck, I was able to at least go inside the house and get something to eat. That's one nice thing about having a bin site here at the farm, is we don't have to pack cold lunches and eat cold meat sandwiches. Especially after a long harvest season, it's nice to have a warm meal in the house. Since we're now at the point where we're unloading the last little bit out of this bin, this grain right here, the last load was 14.1% moisture. Reason being, the fans blow in from the bottom of the bin, so the bottom grain gets a lot more airflow than the top. So usually the bottom of the bin is a lot drier. So this is gonna help our moisture content. Now that I'm inside the bin, you can see here are those side sumps that I started taking out of. Reason being, if you don't start taking out of the side sumps, it just cones up like this in the middle, and you're not able to get the door open to see when the sweep auger's running. So they put these side unloads in here. That way you can get the door open to see what's going on. I was getting the last truck just about halfway loaded. Got the sweep auger kicked on. Let me show you guys inside the bin to see what unfortunately happened. Had the sweep auger running for a little bit, went to check the truck, and ultimately ended up with a little bit too much corn coming out through this auger. which plugged our auger right here that fills the leg. You can tell because it doesn't sound hollow at all. So we got a little bit of corn coming out of there. I know that this auger's plugged, so I'm gonna try to get that going up top. Hopefully this unload auger out of the bin isn't plugged, because getting that thing unplugged is not very fun. So hopefully it's just this overhead auger that's plugged. Unfortunately, kicking the auger on with the button kept tripping the breaker, so it didn't even spin at all. So now we're back to the manual method of having to pull on these belts. That way we can see if we can break some grain free. Whew. Oh. It's a hard pulley to turn, so I think I figured out a better way to do this. Instead of trying to hand auger all the grain from down there up here, I'm just gonna spin the fletting backwards and let all the corn dribble out down there. That way it's not so hard spinning the pulley, and I can clean that stuff by just throwing it back in the bin later. Thankfully, that little bit of me turning the auger manually at the top freed enough corn. As you saw, the auger is going now, and the unload didn't have any corn in it. That was all cleaned out. So now I just got to clean up this little bit of corn, put that inside the bin, and we're going to be done. Well, there we have it. We got everything cleaned up. Thankfully, it was just this auger that was plugged and not the unload, since it's not very fun taking those out of bins. But our 20 loads are contracted. Those are into town. I looked back on the paperwork. It showed that our average moisture content across all the 20 loads and the 3 different bins we took stuff out of was right at 14.3%, so we didn't get docked any on our moisture percentage. So we did a good job of blending for this contract. But that's gonna be it for today's video of HiTech Farmer. Everyone have a safe and healthy Christmas, and we'll see you guys in the next one.